The Miami Dolphins are getting ready for their Week 8 contest against the Atlanta Falcons, but there are big picture questions at play, and we're going to explore a few of them here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today is Wednesday, October 22nd. 2025. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today on the show, some big picture questions. We've been having some big picture conversations. We had our squad show with Jeff Scanina and Jim Greashauber and myself earlier today. Kind of set the table with the debrief from the Cleveland game, and I don't want to spend any more time talking about the Browns game. Do you? Do you want to talk about how we fit the run, or do you want to talk about the interceptions and the miscues? Time to turn the page, right? But in the process of turning the page, instead of focusing on the ins and outs of the matchups with Atlanta, I've also pre-recorded the crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Dolphins with Locked On Falcons and Aaron Freeman. It's an excellent conversation. You guys are going to enjoy it a lot. It kind of sets that stage for you. We've had some developments. We've had some player transactions. Darren Waller placed on injured reserve. We're going to talk about that. I did some research about just how monumental the changes could come sweeping through for the Dolphins roster this offseason and what the magnitude of that would look like. But I want to start with a video that was posted last night by NFL Network's Ian Rapoport on his own YouTube channel, which I was not aware that Ian had his own YouTube channel, to be honest with you. But it has, 11,000 subscribers on YouTube. This video was posted a day ago. It's got 2,000 views. Like, not a very highly viewed piece of content in the grand scheme of what Ian Rapoport does for a living for NFL Network. But the title of this video is called Change is Coming to the Miami Dolphins Organization. The only questions are how and when. And he proceeds to talk about kind of the nature of the loss to the Browns and how it happened. And then after a day, the Dolphins decided not to make any imminent changes in week 1. But then he starts talking about, I could say pretty confidently that the Dolphins are going to make some pretty substantial changes. It's only a matter of how and when. He talked about Tua Tagovailoa and the turnovers and the teammates conversation, but talked about the guarantees that he has. The conversation was really focused in Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa that the product has not been good enough. Change is coming. I think one thing that the past week's events has shown us is change is coming to the Dolphins. Now, obviously, McDaniel is somebody that Stephen Ross likes and respects. He supported him. He chose him. This is a direct quote from this video. He's invested in him with a big-time contract extension. He does not want to fire him. The results, though, have to change. And I think because of the ugly losses, because of Tua throwing teammates under the bus and then kind of recanting and walking all that back, it has forced the entire nation to look at the Miami Dolphins and say, what are they going to do? The results have not been good enough. I think that is obvious. Goes on to talk about Tua's contract. But I could say pretty confidently, this again is a direct quote from Ian Rapoport. I can say pretty confidently that change is coming to the organization. Just a matter of how and when. The why we know, but the how and when. Everyone is watching on how Miami is going to move forward. That's pretty substantial vocabulary to choose to use, to have this level of confidence that change is coming and seismic change. Talking about Mike McDaniel, talking about Tua Tagovailoa, right? And part of that goes into some of the research that I did for the Dolphins and their roster outlook for 2026 on just if they chose to make absolutely monumental sweeping changes, what that would look like, what the implications of that would be. But obviously the power players here are the general manager, Chris Grier, the head coach, Mike McDaniel, the starting quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. Those are all kind of the three figureheads of this organization. We heard from both Mike and Tua today. Tua just finished his press conference as I'm sitting down to record this. And, I think everybody's kind of on watch. And depending on how high up the changes go, it might not matter how well you perform. At the end of the day, if the change goes high enough up the ladder, and I think the change probably should go all the way up to the top with the person who's running the football operation in Chris Grier. That was the change I was most confident in personally last year, right at the end of the season. Hey, I think everybody would really kind of benefit from a different eye coming in here and having a hand in what's assembled. Well, that obviously didn't happen. And I don't know what portion of that may or may not have been. There's all kinds of speculation around the lawsuit with Brian Flores against the Dolphins for the wrongful termination and what Chris Grier knows and doesn't know. And I don't know anything about that. And it'd be reckless for me to come on here with a microphone in front of my face and a camera and speculate and pontificate on that anyway. I don't know anything about it, right? And I try to only really go into stuff that I have looked into enough to have a formal opinion on and feel like I have some semblance of a basis to have an opinion. But when it's your job to have an opinion on everything, inevitably, you're going to be wrong about a lot of stuff. I am no exception to that, right? So I don't know what, if that's a piece of it, I don't know. That's the big working fan theory this fall. But it could just be as simple as the coach is on an extension. The quarterback just signed a big time contract extension. The owner liked the nucleus of people that were in place. And if we made a change, we'd be asking an executive to come in with people that we just made a number of long-term commitments to that aren't realistic to get out of. What kind of candidates does that give us? Like maybe that's a piece of this conversation too. I don't know. I'm only presenting possibilities. But once Steve Ross came out with the statement at the end of the year last year, you kind of knew what time it was. Everybody's on, everybody's back, and everybody's on notice. Well, Ian Rapoport's reporting and how strongly the verbiage is, I can say pretty confidently, change is coming to the organization. That's not, hey, we're going to get rid of Jalen Ramsey. That's not, hey, we're going to be better with our team culture and be on time to meetings. That's the power structure of this organization. That's what is at play here. And to know that this is the most direct sign for me that there's an affirmation that these things are starting to be in the works. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Barry Jackson, the Herald, put together an outstanding piece, but it kind of outlined who the heirs are for Stephen Ross with his daughters and his son-in-law. And that hadn't really been talked about. The last time we were talking about a succession plan for Stephen Ross, it was Bruce Beal as the guy who couldn't help himself and got the Dolphins in a bunch of hot water for the role that he played in a bunch of tampering stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that there's talk of change happening, and now this really confident language, and in the same week, a report comes out about the who and what of the owner's succession plan as an owner that's in the later stages of life. Kind of feels like we're greasing the wheels here. And I don't think there's going to be any changes imminent off the Atlanta game just because of the close proximity of the Baltimore game. But anytime you get more than a week, you kind of look at those windows of time to say, this might be a point and an opportunity to facilitate change somewhere with something because you have extra time to prepare for the next game. Whether that's a coach or an executive ahead of the trade deadline, a quarterback change, other personnel changes, you name it. Well, let's talk about 2026 for a minute, because that's when the opportunity is going to come to start to formulate whatever the next iteration of the team with whoever is left over and whoever is new can start to happen. Just how deep could these changes go for the players at the top of the food chain on the current roster? Glad you asked. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. NFL season is back. Honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a bit of a hassle between queues online, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why you should use Game Time, the app that brings the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. You can pull up the Game Time app, and in a few taps, you can have amazing deals and get tickets to your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. The app is super simple. You can even see the view from your seat before you commit and hit buy. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. I wrote this for A to Z Sports last night. The title of the story is The Miami Dolphins should be in position to shatter an NFL record in 2026, though it's not necessarily one anyone wants to hold. We're talking about the salary cap. We're talking about dead cap. Money that had been paid to players previously that you still owe them. And if you move on from those players, all of that money accelerates into that year's cap unless you designate it as a post-June 1st cut, in which case you could split the cap into that year and then the following year. I looked at a bunch of names on the Dolphins roster. Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Austin Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Tua Tagovailoa. Some pretty heavy hitters in the form of contracts on this Dolphins roster. You're looking at the salary cap. You're looking at the salaries that they are owed. So you can look at cap savings and you can also look at cash savings, the budget for your roster, your payroll, right? Your cap is your credit card debt because you used your credit card to pay your payroll in past years and your outstanding balance. Your actual payroll is the cash, right? So cash versus cap, it's an important distinguishment to make. Let's first establish this. The NFL record for dead cap for an NFL franchise was set by the San Francisco 49ers this year. $101,047,358 and counting, and the opportunity that they continue to move on from any additional players off their roster. So over $101 million in dead cap. You're seeing a growing trend across the NFL where more and more teams are kind of embracing like the en masse flushing of cap finances all at once because of the rate in which the salary cap is growing. You know, it's growing at like a 12% clip some years. So that growth, when you're talking about $279.2 million salary cap, next year the projection's around $300 million, right? That major leap in cap year over year is allowing teams to offload more bad contracts faster. And that's where it's relevant to kind of know where the Dolphins stand and where the Dolphins could go if the changes become monumentally sweeping on the roster. The Dolphins right now currently rank 6th in the NFL in 2026 dead cap. This is for Jalen Ramsey offloading that contract after June 1st this year, right? A portion of it went into this year. The vast majority of it went into next year's cap as dead cap. This is Tron Armstead, where he waited to process his retirement until after June 1st, but you restructured his salary down so you could carry him on the roster and get cap savings right away throughout that process. This is Jonnu Smith. This is Cam Smith. A whole bunch of others for a couple $1,000s here and there for undrafted rookies and all that kind of stuff. $34,140,635 in dead cap. That ranks 6th for NFL teams in 2026 already. There's also 2 contracts for players that are on the roster to know that are contracts that void for players that signed one-year deals with Miami this year and got a big signing bonus that the Dolphins then used dummy years on the back end to reduce the cap hit in 2026 or in 2025. Those players are Matthew Judon and Zach Wilson. You want to have a conversation about a couple personnel moves? We could probably have a conversation about Zach Wilson, who just got demoted to QB3, and Matthew Judon, who was a healthy scratch on Sunday against the Browns. That will add an additional $5.16 million to your dead cap charges unless you re-sign either one of those players. And based on how things are going through October 22nd, probably a pretty safe assumption to bet that's not going to happen. So $5.16 million on top of what they already have. It's going to be about $39.3 million in dead cap before you transition away from other players that are on the active roster. Okay. That would move them up to fifth. It would move them in front of the Browns without knowing what contracts the Browns have that are voiding. And based on knowing what they did throughout the entirety of that Deshaun Watson saga, I'd be willing to bet they have contracts that void too. So the Browns will probably stay in front of you. But the Dolphins have the opportunity to shatter the NFL record for dead cap money in 1 year, because of names like Tyreek Hill, who's scheduled to carry a $51.8 million cap charge in 2026. It's already been reported that lead insiders expect him to be released before $11 million of compensation guarantees in March. They should. Oh, and that should have been the case before he had the injury that he had, which is obviously super unfortunate. Hope Tyreek heals as soon as possible. But the Dolphins can cut him at any point before the start of the league year, no questions asked, and they can save $23,650,000 in cap space. But with a cap charge that's almost $52 million, it's $28.248 million in dead cap. Now, that's obviously 23 and change less than 52, using round numbers. So you get a very significant, sizable chunk of cap savings, but you are also adding more than $28 million in additional money in dead cap to the 39 that you're going to be carrying with contracts that already have dead money or contracts you've already moved on from. I'm not a math guy, but that's about $68 million with just Tyreek Hill, and that's considered to be a shoo-in. Now, what happens if this team trades Bradley Chubb before the trade deadline? It would treat, from a cap perspective, it would be treated just as though they were to cut him before the league calendar year starts in March. And if they don't trade Bradley Chubb, I think that should happen anyway because he's on the books for $31 million in cap space. You could save almost $7.5 million in cap space, but you'd incur another $23.8 million in dead cap. You're over $90 million in dead cap space by moving on from Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill alone. And I don't think either one of those, you hear the idea of, hey, we're going to move on from these two players before you even acknowledge the finances. If I told you, hey, Tyreek Hill in his 30s, wide receiver, catastrophic knee injury, and Bradley Chubb, with Bradley Chubb's play thus far this season, are you like, oh, we can't move on from either one of those two? Probably not, right? If you see the big picture and you see the writing on the wall and you see the direction of the team and the organization and what direction it has to go. You're over $90 million in dead cap for 2026. The NFL record is 101. You got rid of two players, but it keeps going. We're going to get into the rest of those names and the possible exits off of them next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel lets you play however you like to, whether that's parlays, player props, or the live lines during the games. You name it, they have it. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. For yourself, whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience that much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. One thing that I did not mention with both Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb is the cash savings. We talked about the cap savings and the dead cap implications. Bradley Chubb is, I'll use round numbers, not exact numbers, about $7.5 million in cap savings, but it's $23.8 million in dead cap. You also save $20.23 million in cash. That is money that you would either be paying Bradley and paying against the cap in 2025 or in 2026, or paying a portion of in 2026 and pushing more money out into future years, into 2027 and beyond. So more than $20 million in cash savings is significant. Also significant is the $36 million in cash you're saving from moving on from Tyreek Hill. So in cap, it's only 23.65. In dead cap, you still have to account for 28.248 million of it. But you're saving $36 million in cash for Tyreek Hill, and you're saving more than $20 million for Bradley Chubb. That's $56 million in cash that you're not paying in that year's cash and cap, or potentially pushing into future years of cap space. Austin Jackson. I like Austin Jackson, but I don't like players that cannot contribute to the cause because they're not suiting up on game day. And that's where we're at with Austin. You don't have the monster savings from a cash perspective, but you would save $11.5 million in cash to move on from Austin Jackson. But this is a contract that the Dolphins have restructured in each of the last 2 years to save cap space in the current year. So of his $15 million cap charge, you'd only save $2 million in cap space, and you would eat an additional $13.7 million in dead cap. So you're talking about now, you're $105 million in cap, dead cap, if you were to move on from Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, and Austin Jackson. Now, I don't think they're going to do all of these things, but you can kind of a la carte them, and I think the first two are locks. I don't think Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill are going to be back. I think things get interesting after this point. Do you keep Austin Jackson and draft somebody? Do you get rid of Austin Jackson and keep the next name that we're going to talk about, which is Minkah Fitzpatrick, and give him a contract extension? Do you not give him a contract extension and let his salary cap charge stay big for you after you restructured him this year? Like, there's a lot of ways that this can go. And if you're going to embrace the idea that we are going to break the record for dead cap because we are going to offload contracts and get ourselves positioned in a position to have a lot of flexibility moving forward, then that's an inevitability that we need to be prepared for. And if you're going to have that kind of mass exodus, and you would still have operating cap space. I mean, Austin Jackson is 2, Bradley Chubb is 7.5, that's 10. Tyreek Hill's 26. And we're at saving $36 million in cap space right now, and that's before you get into potential contract restructures for players that you want to keep, or extensions for players that you want to keep long term. Like you will have a functional offseason despite this massive amount of salary cap charge that is for players that are hypothetically no longer on the roster. right? Minka Fitzpatrick. He's owed $15.6 million in cash in 2026. None of that is guaranteed. So you can move on and save another more than $15.5 million in payroll next year if you wanted to. But remember, they adjusted his contract, gave him a bonus up front so that they could put void years on the back end of it and spread it out to have more cap space for this year to have operating cap throughout the course of the season. You can move on from Minka and save almost $6 million in cap space, but that comes at the expense of $13 million in dead cap. Then there's Tua. There's no cash savings for Tua. His compensation is fully guaranteed for 2025. And it is big money. It's a very large sum of money. It's more than $50 million in cash he's owed. But we did this. I did this story on Monday. In the hypothetical world in which you want to hire new people to come in and run the organization, if they deem, hey, we want to just kind of transition from the old guard. We want to start fresh. We understand we're going to have to take our medicine in year one, and we're willing to do that. But that means we have to do it in order to get the hires that you want to come in and run your organization. Moving on from Tua would be a post-June 1st cut this year. And if you exercised his option trigger in his contract for his $15 million in salary this year, and then designated him as a post-June 1st cut, and you would have to do this within the first 3 days of the league year in March, Tua would carry a $55.4 million dead cap charge in 2026 and an additional $43 million dead cap charge in 2027. It's in total, it's about $99 million in dead cap. And that's unfortunately a world that we have to live in because Tua's play has not been where it needs to be. It has not been good to the point where we're dropping snaps, right? It's the turnovers, but also the plays where we're dropping the snap. And it happened more than once against Cleveland. And for me, if I'm making big picture changes, and that's something that decides whether I get the candidate that I want or don't want, I'm doing whatever the candidate that I want wants to do because it's all about the alignment. And having a holdover at the quarterback position that the coach doesn't want, having a quarterback your coach doesn't want is how the Dolphins got into this freaking mess in the first place. So we have to acknowledge it. In total, current dead cap charges is sitting around $39 million. Tyreek Hill would be $28 million more in dead cap. Bradley Chubb would be $23.8 in additional dead cap. Austin Jackson could be 13.7. Minka Fitzpatrick could be 12.9. Tua, you'd get no cap savings. You'd get no cash savings. But you'd get $11 million in cap savings in 2027, and then you'd be out of your 2028, 2029 commitments and all that. And that's 55.4. In total, it could go as high as just those names, and that's before you get to names like Jason Sanders and Alec Ingold and some other names on the roster that are kind of mid-tier players, names like James Daniels, who we haven't seen suit up for more than 3 snaps this year. It could be in excess as high as, depending on how sweeping of changes you make, it could be as much as $175 million in dead cap. Now, I don't think it would go that extreme. And if you moved on from Tua, that's probably a better incentive to hang on to a player like a Minka Fitzpatrick and hang on to a player like an Austin Jackson and just kind of ride out that last year. Because again, you have these other ways to save cap space, to have operating cap to work with throughout the season. Now, you're not going to be really aggressive in free agency until 2027, but I don't think a new regime should come in and spend a bunch of money in free agency anyway. You got to build it right. And that means building it with youth, building it through the draft, being methodical, understanding that there's no cutting corners to do this. And everything the Dolphins have tried to do for the last 25 years has felt like you try to take the easy way out, the low-hanging fruit, and you cut the corners. And we throw money at a problem here, and we throw money at free agency there. I don't want to do that this time if we're going to do it like that. And that's not to say that they're even going to do it like that. But if you're going to do it like that, and just take those 5 names, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Austin Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Tua Tagovailoa. You're starting new How many of those players are you missing? How many of those players on that list you say, man, if we're starting over, I can't believe we're going to do so without so-and-so with what their age is and what their cost is and what their play is and what their durability is. Minka, who's been here for 7 games? That's it with what the play's been like, and those other additional factors. If you're starting new, I don't think any of those guys make sense. Now, you can have the conversation on whether or not you should do all of it or not. And that's for whoever ultimately takes the reins to decide on what that looks like and what they want to do. But you could make monumental sweeping changes. And in that world, you're clearing about $40 million in cap space in 2026 to offload all of that for the extent of, at the expense of, if you did everybody, it's about $170 million in dead cap. But then in 2027, like you're talking having $170 million in cap space to extend players and sign players in free agency responsibly and give contract extensions out to players that you want to be a piece of your long-term puzzle and potentially trade responsibly and acquire responsibly more mature contracts. Darren Waller on IR. And you don't have to work very hard to convince me that this isn't the worst thing. Because Darren Waller on IR, they've elevated Greg Dulcich to take his place on the 53. Greg Dulcich is not Darren Waller. But we know what the future holds for Darren Waller, who was retired last year and unfortunately made it 4 games in Miami before suffering an injury that landed him on injured reserve. But Greg Dulcich, once upon a time, not that long ago, 2022, was a top 100 pick who had some hamstring issues after his rookie season in Denver and then landed in a Giants tight end room that had 5 guys in it that were investments in the last 2 years. He's been on the practice squad the last 2 months. Talent is not the question. Sometimes teams hit the jackpot on the waiver wire. I'm not saying that Greg Dulcich is going to be that. But I'm saying he has a better chance to prove he's a part of a future role for the Dolphins roster beyond 2025 than what Darren Waller does. And sitting at 1-6, those are the guys I want to see. That's what I want to know. I want to know what that guy's got. I want to know what Jason Marshall's got, who was activated from, had his activation window started for IR. I want to know what Ethan Bonner has, definitively. I want to know what Dante Trader's got. I want to know how much growth Kenneth Grant can show you. I want to see how well Chop Robinson comes on throughout this season to defend the run. I want to see a lot of Jonah Savaianaya. Because the questions we're asking is not, hey, how do we push the buttons to win the game to make a playoff push at this stage? Internally and in-house, they'll do that. And I understand. That's part of the player and coach mentality. It's your job every week. But I'm not in the building. Right? And I'm a fan, and I've been a lifelong fan. I'm going to continue to be a lifelong fan. I'm going to continue to root for the success of the organization. And I'm a draft guy at my roots, which means my root is more of the front office evaluate and project. And that's what I have to start doing for my own sanity, for this program, and to have fun doing it in the process. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. Kyle Krabs, you can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'll be back to talk to you all again tomorrow.